You ever stop and think about what's really happening when your phone unlocks with your face? Or how a self-driving car can tell the difference between a pedestrian and a stop sign? It feels like straight up magic, but it's not. It's actually this incredible process of turning light into numbers, and then turning those numbers into a kind of understanding. So let's pull back the curtain and really get into the fundamentals of computer vision.
Okay, so the first thing we have to wrap our heads around is a massive difference in perspective. When you and I look at a photo, and a computer looks at that exact same photo, we are having two totally, completely different experiences. Let's really break down that contrast. And this slide right here just nails the core idea. For us, seeing is emotional. You see a beautiful sunset, you feel something. You see a picture of a friend, you recognize them instantly, you remember things. It's this rich, holistic experience. But a computer, it sees a spreadsheet. Seriously, a highly structured grid of pure data. For a machine, an image isn't a picture, it's just information.
So, how on earth does a beautiful photograph become, well, a grid of numbers? To really get it, we've got to zoom way, way in, down to the most basic, fundamental component of any digital image.
It all starts right here, with the humble pixel. You can think of it like a single tiny tile in a giant mosaic. Each one of those little tiles has a very specific color and brightness, and every single digital image you've ever laid eyes on is just a massive grid of these little dots, each one holding a tiny piece of numerical data.
Now this is where it gets really cool, the way color is built. A computer doesn't actually see purple. No way. What it sees is a specific amount of red, a certain amount of green, and a particular amount of blue, all in the exact same spot. It's almost like having three separate black and white images, one showing just the intensity of red, another for green, and a third for blue, all stacked right on top of each other.
And this right here is what a tiny little corner of a photo actually looks like to a computer. It's not colors, it's not shapes, it's just a matrix of numbers. In this simple grayscale example, a higher number might mean it's a brighter pixel, and a lower number, a darker one. This numerical grid is the absolute raw material for everything that's about to happen next.
Okay, so we have our grid of numbers. The image has been translated into a language that a computer can actually work with. But what part of the computer is doing the understanding? To answer that, we've got to jump into the world of AI. So, at the very, very top, we've got artificial intelligence. You can think of this as the big umbrella term. It's the grand ambition, the whole idea of creating machines that can think, reason, and perceive in ways that we'd normally associate with human intelligence. Now, tucked inside that big AI umbrella is machine learning, and this is a total game changer. Because instead of trying to write a million if-then rules to get a computer to do something, we just give it a ton of data and let it figure out the patterns all by itself. It actually learns from experience, kind of like we do. And then, a super powerful branch of machine learning is deep learning. This is where we start using these complex structures called neural networks, which are loosely inspired by the wiring of the human brain. These networks have many, many layers, which lets them learn incredibly subtle and complex patterns in data. This is the real powerhouse behind most of the computer vision you see today. And finally, all of this brings us right back to our topic. Computer vision. This is the specialized field that takes all of those amazing AI, machine learning, and especially deep learning tools, and points them squarely at one problem. How do we make sense of visual data? In other words, how do we understand those grids of numbers we were just talking about? Okay, this is the aha moment. This is where the two sides of the story, the image has a grid of numbers, and the AI tools that find patterns finally come together. Let's connect the dots. Remember that matrix of numbers we saw a minute ago? Well, that grid isn't just, a way to think about an image. It is literally the data. It is the raw input that we feed directly into our learning systems. And this quote right here, it gets to the very heart of it. For a computer, seeing isn't an experience, it's math. Tasks like finding the edge of an object, identifying a face, or reading a street sign, it's all just a series of really complex mathematical operations performed on that grid of pixel values.
So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. The matrix of pixels is the data, and the deep learning model is the phenomenally powerful tool that learns to find patterns within that sea of numbers. When an AI sees a cat, it's not seeing fur and whiskers, it's recognizing a specific recurring mathematical pattern of pixel values that it's been trained over and over to identify as cat. So when you really get this fundamental connection, you start to realize something pretty profound. We're not just teaching computers to copy how we see. We're actually creating an entirely new form of perception, one that's built from the ground up on a foundation of pure mathematics.
All right, so let's just do a quick recap of the whole shebang. First, any image gets broken down into a numerical matrix of pixels. Simple enough. Second, powerful AI systems, especially those deep learning models, are trained on millions of these number grids to find patterns. And third, by recognizing and processing those numerical patterns, the computer is, for all intents and purposes, able to see.
And that leaves us with a pretty mind-bending question to think about. See, our vision was shaped by biology, by millions of years of evolution for survival. A computer's vision, on the other hand, is being shaped by pure data and mathematics. So as this technology gets more and more powerful, what patterns, what connections, what hidden realities will it start to notice in the world that are completely and utterly invisible to us?